All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining me this afternoon to spend a few minutes talking about a topic that is brand new to us that none of us have ever thought about, which is teaching research in an AI era, right? So, of course, I know we're all thinking about AI all the time. And so we wanted to offer a unique webinar this afternoon and one that is targeted to our faculty as we continue to think through and process all the different ways that AI is impacting us, but especially today as it relates to student research and what we can take away from today's session and apply in our classrooms and learn from one another, hopefully. So with that, I'm going to share my screen so that we can step through a couple of things that I've prepared for us this afternoon. Okay, so here's my quick overview of how I have structured our time together in the next few minutes. I think I should get extra points for ensuring that all of my main points are alliterated. So we're going to talk through about successes with student research and the use of AI, talk about some of the struggles that we see as students use AI in their research, and then spend some time looking at a couple of strategies for moving forward with thinking about how students are using AI in the research, and then certainly allow some time for advertising and encouraging participation in our next webinar, and also allow some time for questions and answers. So let me say that when I'm talking about the successes and the struggles and the strategies, that all of this is based in a quick literature review that I did. So I thought it would not be right of me as a librarian to just kind of off the hip try and come up with some of these things. So all of this are trends that we're seeing in the research. But I want to provide that little caveat that even though some of these things were researched very recently and published in, the end of 2025, it's likely that some of these conclusions are even out of date because of the rapidly evolving nature of AI and all of that. But some of these I think are pretty consistent, and we'll continue to see these trends and these practices persist over the long term. So I wanted to start with the positive. I think all too often when we think about using AI, especially in an academic context, we all too quickly focus in on the negative and the things that are no-nos and problematic for us. So I wanted to start with highlighting how students are using AI in the research process in beneficial ways. So, brainstorming topics. So, for a lot of students, they just struggle with beginning to get started with their research. They just struggle with coming up with an idea. And so, in that sense, using AI to help brainstorm topics that are relevant, that are interesting to the student, is very helpful. And then, even if you have students who are proficient and really great at coming up with ideas, it may be that they need some help with reining in their research topic, their research question. And so using AI can really help students to refine their topics a bit so that they develop a topic that is feasible for the scope of the assignment that they're investigating. Um, Students can use AI in the research process to increase their knowledge of certain topics. So, especially if they're trying to investigate something that is new to them or incorporates a new concept or new idea, then using AI to help learn more about that in a basic fundamental way is very helpful. I equate this with kind of the older practice of in library research using tertiary sources to help develop some background knowledge before continuing on in the research process. Students can use AI successfully for finding sources, for finding evidence of arguments they're making, for finding examples. And I find that students are most successful in this particular aspect of using AI when that is done within the context of a tool that focuses on research. So tools like Scopus AI, Consensus, even some embedded features within library databases. I find that those guardrails are really helpful for ensuring that students are successful in that aspect. They can use AI to analyze data. So I don't see this as all too dissimilar from how students might use software or other tools in their data analysis. but AI may offer a competitive version that is at no cost to the student. And then in all of these studies that I looked at, and some that I just didn't include here, almost always they land on how AI is a useful tool for helping students in their writing. And so certainly writing is an important part of the research process because we want to disseminate what we've learned and what we found. But I feel that that kind of begins to push into a different direction that's a bit more tangential to research in the sense that we're talking about it today. But certainly it's worth noting, and it surfaces repeatedly, even in articles that are focused on how to use AI in the research process. So now we'll flip the coin here, and we'll talk about how using AI in research can be problematic. So I think certainly it's one of the first things we think about when we think about students using AI is plagiarism. That they some students commit plagiarism, whether they intend to or not, even in traditional senses where they're not using AI to help them throughout the process. But I find that for some reason, it's very easy for students just to not think about AI as a source, that AI is generating content and ideas that is not their own. And so we want to be cognizant of that. We want to be reinforcing to students that as they're using AI to help them through their research process, that they need to give attribution to that as a source, as they would any other source. But for some reason, it's just all too easy to forget about that when engaging with these tools. Another struggle, another problem is just the inaccuracies and the unreliability of some of the AI tools that students are engaging with as they're engaging in the research process. And I think a lot of this stems from using maybe free versions of subscriptions that aren't updated with the latest content. And so just kind of understanding that limitation is important for us and also for students. Over-reliance was one of the struggles that surfaced in a lot of these studies. Students just depend upon AI to, in some cases, do all of it, do all the things related to their research, which is certainly not helpful to the student and not what we want them to be using these AI tools for. And I think related to that, you kind of transition into some of these potential dangers that stem from over-reliance, that because students are over-reliant on these tools, they're not engaging in learning, they're not exercising critical thinking, and they're just kind of outsourcing that to these other tools. And then you also run into problems of lack of creativity, knowing that probably for some of the tools that students are using that are not paid and so limited to the resources they're using, that there really is not an opportunity for AI to be innovative, that it's depending upon old data, old information, and so you'll be lacking that in the outputs that you're getting that students are relying on. And then there's a lack of depth and rigor to some of the content that we see coming from students as they're relying on AI to help them in their research. Just because that's the nature of the outputs of AI generally, that they'll make these broad sweeping statements and not really dig much deeper into that, which is something that we expect to see, especially in advanced research that students may be doing. So what are some strategies that we can begin to think about using as we help students to engage with these AI tools in their research? So this is the one that I first thought of, and this does not come from the literature. This is just all me. I think having honest conversations with our students about using AI in the research is the absolute starting point for us. This is the baseline. And in this way, we're communicating this collaborative learning environment. And by that, I mean that students don't have this all figured out. Instructors don't have this all figured out. And so we're learning through this together. And I would hope that that would resonate with students and kind of encourage them that kind of we're in this together. And that, essentially we're building this plane as we're flying it. So that comes with some feelings of excitement as we're doing innovative things, but also some anxieties and some apprehensions. But I think just being honest about that is a good place to start. Some other things to consider about and when we're having these conversations is the AI syllabus policy that we recently approved that will appear in our course syllabi as we move forward. I think that's just a great springboard. So we framed that particular policy in a way that there are some fundamental principles that are presented there that are great talking points to engage with in students before we step into kind of the practical elements of do this, don't do this, so on and so forth. And I think as a needed follow-up to that springboard conversation would be talking through kind of your procedure as an instructor for how you will handle unauthorized uses of AI. So you can talk about kind of the threshold that you'll be kind of looking for in terms of AI indicated reports that we're using in copy leaks and so on. But just reminding students that really that procedure is a part of this ongoing conversation that we're not trying to come up with weapons that we can use against students to accuse them of whatever it is we're concerned about, but that we just want to have conversations. So to me, I think this is the baseline strategy, the most important thing that we can do as we talk to students about using these particular tools in their own research. Coming back to the literature, this particular article is written in the context of elementary and secondary education and a particular tool that's being used in that context. But I think these were great strategies that we can consider and even implement here in our context of higher learning. So these are some things that we can encourage students to do. So to use these tools independently on their own, just to go in and experiment with them and play with them if you're comfortable with that. So I know that there are some ethical and environmental concerns about the use of AI, but this is one approach you could take. Just low stakes, kind of encouraging students to explore how they might use these particular tools in their own research without it being graded or assessed in any way. Providing guided practice. So for me, this equals assignments, right? And so as we think about providing guided practice or structuring assignments that help students use AI tools in their research, these are some things that we can think about. That in one sense, maybe we want to think about AI proofing our assignments, and we do that by requiring students to reflect on the work that they're doing or on the tools that you're using. We require them to do maybe some deeper analysis that we know these tools just aren't able to perform, and so on and so forth. So that's one approach we could take is trying to AI proof the assignments. We could also encourage students by reminding them kind of a little bit about what's at stake here, right? That their intellectual independence, their own ability to think critically and problem solve should be valued, and we should encourage that. And so maybe we also push our students to adopt a sophisticated skepticism, as these authors put it. So I don't want my students to necessarily be cynical when they're using AI tools, but I do want them to understand that these tools do have limitations. And so we want to acknowledge that the outputs that we're getting from these AI tools are not they're not gospel, right? There are mistakes sometimes presented in these outputs. And so sometimes we want to make students aware of that and that you just can't blindly trust what is coming out of these tools, that you have to approach them with a little bit of discernment. And then another approach we could take here, if we find that we don't really want to go the route of AI proofing our assignments or even providing guided practice in use of AI, we could consider open assignments. So a lot of times students are tempted to use AI in their research and their assignments when they're just not really motivated by that assignment. And so by creating some assignments like open assignments that have higher stakes because these are public facing open content, that might encourage students to perform better and do their best work. So the modeling of the use of these tools, I think the thing to be aware of with that, the disclaimer, is that if we're going to model the use of these tools, then we as faculty need to be proficient in the use of these tools, right? And so that's on us to make sure that we are in a position to be able to do that and to do that well. And then facilitating collaboration is another strategy. And really, a lot of these particular strategies, I think, could be used effectively in combination. And so as we look at a couple of examples of this, I think you'll see how that plays out. So As was mentioned in the webinar, I think last week for students on using AI in research, we highlighted that AI tools are appearing in many library databases. I think this is a great place to begin to encourage students to maybe do some of that independent use because I see this as a more controlled environment for them to experiment. But you could easily take this and use this for guided practice. So maybe evaluate how different library databases approach using AI integrations. So you'll see that the one from EBSCO, in my opinion, is very kind of like low level, just offering a summary, which is generate AI insights, but some of them are much more interactive. So the research assistant from ProQuest allows students to click on different options. The AI research tool within JSTOR allows students to ask questions, and they have some canned questions there. And so I think this is a great place to provide that guided practice in the use of these AI tools and evaluating them. And we can also demonstrate this, model this in a classroom setting. And then this could also be used for facilitating collaboration. I think this would make for a great class discussion or a discussion prompt within an online class. And again, the nice thing about this is we're talking about doing all of these things, employing all of these strategies within the context of a very controlled, very targeted environment that is focused on research. And so we can also think about some other strategies to model. So I see these as things we can do to model the best use of AI, but also if we want to mitigate the misuse or abuse of AI when students are engaging in their research. One very simple tactic is to require that when students are doing their research, looking for sources for assignments, that we require them to use library database URLs. As opposed even to using a DOI. I know that for some of our citation styles, DOI is king. We want that. But again, if we're thinking about encouraging students to approach research in a different way, this is one technique that we can use to ensure they're going to the place we want them to go that we can kind of double check on. And so these are approaches we can take to verify citations that we're getting, but I would encourage you to share this with students as well. And in fact, in the webinar that was focused to students, we shared with them these same tips. So it's kind of like we're practicing what we preach, that we tell students, these are some of the things that we'll do when we kind of see things that just don't add up for us in your research that you're presenting to us, but you can do the same thing. And so the real life example that I share is even just a couple of days ago, I put a topic into Gemini and told it to come up with a certain number of peer-reviewed articles, like five, I think, five peer-reviewed articles written in the past couple of years on this particular topic. And three of the five sources were that didn't exist. They were just fake sources. And I think that we don't do these things to scare students, but maybe we should think about giving them pause as I think about using some of these sources. So again, the idea is as we step through these things, we see where the limitations of these tools are in the research process. And for my own example, the sources I was looking at, I didn't even make it to most of these places to go and search. That after searching in just two places, it was clear to me that this was not a real source. So the guided practice, the assignments, this is kind of my favorite. And so I just want to share with you an example that I use in one of my courses, which is a lower level research course that is done online. And so this particular assignment is the first part of a project that students work on throughout the term, and it culminates in an annotated bibliography. And so I like the scaffolded approach to assignments because it kind of alleviates pressure on students and motivates them, I think, to hopefully perform a little bit better because there's not so much pressure as you work through the particular project. And so for this particular assignment, I'm really focusing in on that brainstorming use of AI. And so the things that I've done here is kind of just given them some basic instruction here, but I've also provided them the prompt that I want them to use. And in brackets is where I ask them to change the prompt just a little bit. And so in one sense, even though this is guided practice, I'm also modeling by giving them the prompt. And certainly, and I communicate to them as well that they can change the prompt in certain ways if they want to, but I want to see how they've changed it, right? And so I've given them the prompt. I've told them some tools that they can explore as they're doing this particular assignment. And then in this assignment, there are two evaluations they do. The first evaluation that you see there is for them to kind of just think about the outputs of the tools. So how are they similar to one another? How are they different? And then kind of the AI proof element is for them to tell me which one they preferred and why they preferred it. And then the second part is that what the outputs they're getting are research questions. And so they're to take one of these research questions that they wouldn't mind kind of exploring further and then evaluate it. And so I've given them a resource to provide them a framework for evaluating the research question that they've picked in terms of like the focus of that question, the researchability, the specificity, the relevance, so on and so forth. So I've given them a tool to help them do what I've asked them to do. And I realized that this is one component of the assignment that they could actually use AI to cheat and do the evaluation for them, and that's the risk of it. But it forces them to engage with the output rather than just blindly accepting it. I want them to engage with it and see, sometimes a lot of these research questions I'm getting will be compound questions. And I realize that that expands the focus of the research question into a couple of lines of inquiry rather than staying focused on one specific line of inquiry. So that's my hope that they will kind of put those pieces together in this particular assignment. And then in keeping with our AI policy, they are required to have a disclosure statement there at the end of the assignment that acknowledges that they've used an AI tool for a specific purpose, and that is to develop their research question. So as I think about all of these strategies, and in particular this last one, which is my favorite, which is the guided practice, I thought a great next step would be for us as an institution to begin to create a repository of example assignments or example activities where we're asking students to engage with AI. So several years ago in the state, one of our partner institutions in Pawnee did this, and they were asking for folks to submit these ideas. And that was kind of at the height of the newness of generative AI tools. And so since that has kind of cooled off a bit, I think it would be great for us to kind of share our ideas and our expertise and our uses of these things locally with one another. And this is something that I'm seeing other institutions do as well. And I think that is a great resource for us to collect, not only to document kind of that historical aspect of it, but also as a place for us to go to get ideas. Because I know that all of us are doing really innovative, creative things in our classes, not just with AI, but certainly with AI and engaging with AI. So more to come on that, but I think this would be a really encouraging thing for us to do. And so there are my references that I stepped through there. So as promised, we do have another workshop coming up. This one again is targeted primarily to faculty, where our local OER specialist, Anna Scatoni, will be stepping through an overview of open educational resources for faculty. So you will see additional advertisements of that in the coming days, but I just wanted to go ahead and put that on your radar for now. So we've come to that point that if you do have any questions or comments to share, I'm happy to entertain those. And since there are just very few of us, please feel free to unmute and fire away.
That was a lot of information, Rusty.
It is a lot of information, right?
It was really good. But I just started almost like a research type class with my students at a fourth year for third, fourth, but I'm trying to rework the course right now because I see the benefit of it.
Mhm.
And right now, being in the introductory phases and almost my experimental phase with this class this year, just seeing how it goes, seeing where the students are, seeing how their minds are when it comes to this topic of research and how they would tackle it. I'm seeing where while I'm doing the same thing you're doing in the sense of giving them part one, part two, part three to do the assignment, I can see how they get overwhelmed. And then I'm trying to work with them through it and guide them and just kind of like almost kind of guide them and tell them, okay, so next you have to do this. And then next, so I'm developing that. Now I'm hoping in the coming like years when I've rework the course and I set it up a little bit more concretely, it'll make more sense to them. But I think research is something that these students need to know, and they need to understand how to go about it while utilizing AI. And I might end up having to bug one of you to come maybe speak maybe at the beginning or something, just to help with that process, just because I know um, if we're able to have AI articles now, I'm realizing like the fight's there. Like we got to figure out how do we use it? How do we get them to understand what's their thought, what's not their thought?
Right.
And it's a challenging field right now, especially when it comes to originality.
Right. So, two things. So, I found in my own experience, even though I've been doing these AI-based assignments only since what, January, that I found out very quickly if you give students an inch, they'll take a mile. And
Yeah.
so, if you say yes, use it on this assignment, they just blanket assume I can use it for everything, right?
Or if
Um,
you tell them use it to generate topic options or
right,
topic like ideas and things like that, they're like, oh, okay, so that means I can do it for no,
right,
that's not
right.
what I said. I
So,
said, let's find where the gap is. Let's ask the questions. And, instead of you doing the whole literature review and pulling, PubMed and everything, let's see where the gaps come up. Let's see if this is a topic that's ever been done.
yeah,
And it's one of those where they're like, oh, well, I see that there's a gap. Okay, now how do I make it kind of put it together? I'm like, no, no, no. You still need to give me the research that supports this idea that you have.
right,
And
right.
so it's one of those conversations.
And it is so the other thing is that it really is a literacy. This is a new literacy that we're teaching our students engaging with AI, but it does complement very nicely with other literacies that we're teaching, like information literacy. So certainly do see that connect there, and I think some of those skills that we're teaching in information literacy are transferable to AI literacy when we're talking about evaluating outputs, evaluating sources, fact checking, those types of things. There's a clear connection there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think I just it's an exciting time a little bit. I know
It,
it's
it is.
frustrating,
It
but it's
is.
exciting.
Yeah,
I
and I always think in the back of my mind, it's super exciting, and I feel like I'm getting a handle on it. But then I know next month it's going to be totally
I know
different. So,
it's
so
true.
a little frustrating, but also exciting and all the things, right? All the
All the
things with
things you
AI.
want education and academia to be.
Right, right. Well, thank you all for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and close out the recording. So this will appear here in a day or two on our YouTube channel as well. But I want to thank you for joining me and participating in our webinar today.